My daughter's smile lasted a second too long when she handed me the mug. It wasn't warm. It wasn't casual. It was tight, like she'd practiced it before walking into the room. "This one's just for you, Mom," she said. "Chamomile. A little honey. Drink it while it's still hot." Steam floated up from the cup, slow and pale. I stared at it, longer than I should have. Something in my gut twisted, and I couldn't explain why. It wasn't the tea itself. It was the way she leaned forward, watching my hands wrap around the mug like she was waiting for something to happen. She'd never cared what I drank before. Most holidays, she barely noticed me at all. Usually, she'd be glued to her phone, nodding while I talked. But today she was laser-focused. Across the living room, my son-in-law suddenly found the Christmas lights fascinating. He adjusted them over and over, not looking at me once. His own mug sat untouched on the coffee table. That's when my stomach dropped. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't make a scene. I just reached out, calmly, and switched our mugs. No announcement, no drama. No one noticed, except my daughter. Her smile twitched, just for a split second, but I saw it. "Wait, no, Mom," she said quickly. "That one's yours." Too late. I'd already taken a sip from his cup. Cold, bitter, black coffee. I smiled like nothing was wrong and took another small sip. About 15 minutes later, my son-in-law rubbed his temples and said he felt lightheaded. 20 minutes in, his words started running together. By 30, he couldn't stand straight. My daughter rushed into the kitchen, whispering urgently into her phone. I stayed on the couch, hands folded, watching the Christmas lights blink red and green against the frosted window. No one asked how I felt. No one remembered the cups had been switched. That night, lying awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept pounding in my head. That tea was never meant for him. And if that tea wasn't meant to kill me, what exactly were they trying to do to me? The next morning, they acted like nothing had happened. My daughter laughed while setting plates on the table, like the night before was just some funny holiday hiccup. "Your dad just overdid it," she said. Pouring juice. You know how he gets during Christmas. I watched her face while she talked. The smile never quite reached her eyes. She didn't look at me when she said it, either. My son-in-law looked rough, pale, moving slow. He kept rubbing his forehead like his head was packed with cotton. When I asked if he was feeling better, he shrugged and said, "Must have been the eggnog." Funny thing was, I hadn't seen him touch a drop. I took a sip of my coffee and waited. No dizziness, no fog, no shaking hands, nothing. And at my age, you learn to listen to your body. I felt clear, sharp. Whatever had been in that tea wasn't meant to knock me out. It was meant to make me look off, confused, weak, like I couldn't be trusted with my own thoughts. That scared me more than poison ever could. After breakfast, I said I was heading home early. My daughter froze. "Already? Mom?" "You shouldn't drive alone. We had plans tonight." "I'm fine," I said, grabbing my coat. She followed me to the door, her voice suddenly sweet again. Too sweet. "Just call me when you get home, okay?" I nodded and left. 3 hours later, I was sitting alone in my kitchen, with the lights off, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The house smelled faintly like cinnamon, from a candle I'd burned the night before. I wasn't afraid. I was angry at myself. All those times I'd ignored that little voice in my head. All the moments I'd brushed things off because it was easier to believe my own daughter wouldn't hurt me. That night, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying Christmas morning like a broken tape, rewinding to that exact second her smile changed. At 3 a.m., I got up and walked to the spare bedroom. I opened the old filing cabinet, the one my late husband used to call my worry drawer. Inside were decades of documents I'd kept neatly filed. That's when I saw it, a thin folder with my daughter's handwriting on the tab. Updated paperwork, she'd said months ago, just hospital stuff. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The first page made my stomach go cold. This wasn't hospital paperwork. This was control. And when I read the next page, I realized they'd already planned what would happen if that tea had worked. I read the first page twice, hoping my eyes were lying to me. They weren't. The document sitting in my hands wasn't some routine hospital form. It was a durable power of attorney. Medical, financial, property. Every single decision handed over with one signature, mine. I flipped the pages slowly, forcing myself to breathe. According to this paper, the moment a doctor decided I was mentally unfit, my daughter would be in charge of everything. My money, my house, where I lived, what treatment I received, and suddenly, that cup of tea made a whole lot more sense. If I'd gotten confused, if I'd ended up in a hospital bed, slurring my words, unable to explain myself, this paper would have kicked in automatically. I sat there on the bed for a long time, holding that folder like it might bite me. My hands didn't shake. They went numb. I thought about how she'd slid the papers across my kitchen table months ago. How she'd smiled and said, "It's just standard stuff, Mom. Everyone's doing it now." And how I'd signed without reading every word. Because she was my daughter. That was the part that hurt the most. By the time the sun started creeping through the window, I'd made up my mind. At 8 a.m. on the dot, I called my lawyer. He answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "and I need to see you today." 2 hours later, I was sitting across from him in his office, the document laid out between us. He read it slowly, adjusting his glasses, then looked up at me. "Did you understand what you were signing here?" he asked. "No," I said calmly. "I trusted my daughter." He nodded once. "That told me everything. This gives her full authority," he said. "Not just medical, financial and property, too." "I want it gone," I said. "Today." We revoked it immediately, drew up a new one from scratch. New power of attorney, new living will, new trust. No shortcuts this time. I chose my grandson as executor. Quiet kid, smart, honest, the kind of person who listens more than he talks. When it came time to sign, my hand was steady as a rock. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter, but I wasn't done yet. Because paperwork is one thing. Money tells the real story. And when I walked into my bank later that afternoon, I realized they'd already been helping themselves. The bank was quiet that afternoon. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every sound feel louder than it should. I sat across from a young woman in a navy blazer. Her nameplate said Christine. She smiled politely while pulling up my accounts, the way people do before they know they're about to see something uncomfortable. Just a routine review, I said. I want to see all activity from the last year. She nodded and clicked through a few screens. Then her smile faded. Her eyes moved left to right, then stopped. She clicked again, slower this time. Is something wrong? I asked. She hesitated. There's an authorized monthly transfer going out of your account. To who? She turned the screen slightly toward me. An external account under your daughter's name. $750 a month. My jaw tightened. I hadn't agreed to that, not once. How long? I asked. Since August, she said. It's listed as family support. Family support. I almost laughed. Christine kept clicking. There are also a few withdrawals that don't follow a regular pattern. She printed the statements and slid them across the desk. 400 here. 600 there. A charge at a furniture store I'd never stepped foot in. A payment to a medical supply company I didn't recognize. And then one line at the bottom of the page made my stomach drop. Emergency cash withdrawal. $2,000. I didn't make that withdrawal, I said. Christine looked up at me. Her expression had shifted from polite to serious. These were authorized under a power of attorney document we have on file.
Not anymore, I said. It was revoked yesterday. I handed her the paperwork from my lawyer. She read it carefully, then nodded. I'll freeze all authorizations immediately. No online or phone changes without you present, and I recommend flagging your account. Do it, I said. Before I left, I asked her to print everything, every transaction for the last 18 months. When I got home, I spread the papers across my kitchen table. I recognized every check I'd written, every loan I'd given when my daughter cried and said they were struggling. But these were taken quietly, automatically, without asking. This wasn't family helping family. This was theft, dressed up in concern and holiday smiles. My phone buzzed. My daughter's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. And 3 days later, she showed up at my house unannounced, smiling like nothing had happened. 3 days later, I saw her car pull into my driveway. I didn't need to check the clock. I already knew who it was. She parked carefully, checked her reflection in the side mirror, and practiced that same soft smile I'd seen my whole life. She walked up the path carrying a casserole dish like a peace offering. I opened the door before she could knock. "Mom," she said brightly, "I brought your favorite, chicken and rice just like you taught me." I didn't step aside. Her smile flickered. "Can I come in?" "What do you want?" I asked. She shifted the dish in her hands. "I'm worried about you. You left Christmas early. You're not answering my calls." "I've been busy," I said. "With what?" she asked, still smiling. "Paying attention." That smile finally slipped. She tried again, softer this time. "Mom, this isn't like you. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe we should talk to a doctor just to make sure everything's okay." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "I already talked to someone," I said. "My lawyer and my bank." Silence. The casserole dish sagged in her arms like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. "You went to the bank?" she asked. "I saw the transfers," I said calmly. "Every single one. The monthly withdrawals, the emergency cash, the charges I never made." Her face flushed red. "That money was for us. You said you'd help." "I said I'd help when you asked," I replied. "I never said you could take." She straightened, her voice sharpening. "I am not a thief. I'm your daughter." "Then act like one." That's when the mask dropped. "You're being paranoid," she snapped. "You're imagining things. People your age get confused." I held her gaze. The power of attorney has been revoked. Your name has been removed from my accounts. Any further access will be reported. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. Reported to who? The police. You think they'll believe you over me? I smiled. I have records, and a lawyer who's very interested in this conversation. For the first time, she looked unsure. You can keep the casserole, I said, and closed the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. I thought that would be the end of it, until my grandson called and told me what he'd overheard. It was early evening when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my daughter. It was my grandson. Grandma, he said quietly, not his usual upbeat tone. This one was careful, heavy. Do you have a minute? I sat down at the kitchen table. Of course, sweetheart. There was a pause. I don't know if I should even say this. I didn't want to cause problems. == 14. You're not, I said. Go on. He took a breath. Before Christmas, before you got there, I heard Mom and Dad talking in the kitchen. My grip tightened on the phone. They didn't know I was in the hallway, he continued. Dad asked if everything was ready, and Mom said yes. She said you'd be compliant by New Year's. The word hit me like ice water. Compliant. What did they mean by that? I asked. I don't know, he said, but it didn't sound good. And after Christmas, after you left early, they were arguing. Mom kept saying the plan got messed up. My chest ached, not because I was shocked, but because I finally had confirmation. You did the right thing telling me, I said. He hesitated. There's something else. I closed my eyes. Okay. I recorded something, he said. The night after Christmas, I didn't know what to do with it, but I saved it. My heart started pounding. He played the recording. His mother's voice came through first, sharp, angry. She wasn't supposed to switch the cups. Everything was set up. Then his father, lower, tense. So what now? We wait, my daughter said. She's old. People will believe us eventually. The recording stopped. I'm sorry, my grandson said. I should have told you sooner. I stared at the wall, the room suddenly very quiet. You protected yourself, I said, and now you're protecting me. There was another pause. Are you okay, Grandma? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I am now. After we hung up, I stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. They hadn't just underestimated me. They counted on me disappearing quietly. They were wrong. And 2 days later, I made sure there was no legal way they could ever touch my life again. 2 days later, I was back in my lawyer's office. Same chair, same desk, different energy. This time, I wasn't there to ask questions. I was there to close doors. My lawyer slid a thick folder toward me. Everything is ready, he said. The trust, the updated will, the new medical directives, it's all airtight. I flipped through the pages slowly. My house, my savings, my investments, all of it placed into a trust that my daughter couldn't touch, not now, not later, not with a team of lawyers. I've named my grandson as the primary beneficiary, I said. He nodded. And your daughter? She gets nothing, I replied. And if she challenges it, she still gets nothing. He raised an eyebrow. That's firm. That's clarity, I said. He smiled and pointed to the final page. Then sign here. I didn't hesitate. After that, we drafted a formal letter. Clear language, no emotion, just facts. The revocation, the trust, the reasons. Certified mail, signature required. Are you sure you want to send this? He asked. This could permanently damage your relationship. She ended it already, I said. I'm just putting it in writing. When I left his office, the air felt lighter, like something heavy had finally been set down. That evening, my phone blew up. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. I didn't answer. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I listened to one voicemail. Mom, this is insane, my daughter snapped. You can't just cut me off like this. We need to talk like adults. I deleted it. Another came in later. "You're making a huge mistake," she said. "You'll regret this." I turned my phone off. That night, I made myself a cup of tea from a sealed box I'd bought myself. I sat by the window and watched the stars come out, one by one. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for anything. I was calm. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because a few weeks later, someone knocked on my door, and they weren't family. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the doorbell rang. No warning, no phone call, just one sharp chime. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set my coffee down and opened the door. A woman stood on my porch, maybe early 30s, professional, holding a clipboard, calm smile, neutral eyes. "Mrs. Patterson?" she asked. "Yes." "I'm Sarah Chen with Adult Protective Services. We received a report requesting a wellness check." I almost laughed, almost. I stepped aside. "Come on in, want some tea?" She blinked, surprised. "Sure." We sat in the living room. She asked her questions carefully. How often I ate, if I took medication, if I managed my own finances, if I felt safe living alone. I answered without rushing, clear, direct, honest. Then I stood up, walked to the hall closet, and brought back a folder. "This might help," I said, handing it to her. Inside were bank statements, the revoked power of attorney, copies of the trust, a transcript of the recording my grandson had given me, a letter from my lawyer. She flipped through slowly, her expression shifting from polite to serious. "This is very thorough," she said. "I used to be an accountant," I replied. "Old habits." She closed the folder. "I don't see any signs of neglect or impairment here. In fact, you seem to be managing extremely well." I thought so too. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I see cases like this more than you'd think. Adult children trying to take control. It usually doesn't end well for them." After she left, I stood at the window and watched her car disappear down the street. That should have been the end of it. But my daughter wasn't done trying to rewrite the story. Because weeks later, my grandson showed up with news that changed everything. A few weeks after the visit from Adult Protective Services, my grandson showed up at my door. No warning, no smile, just that serious look he got when something heavy was sitting on his chest. "Grandma," he said, setting his bag down, "I need to tell you something." I poured him coffee and waited. "Mom and Dad moved," he said. "Arizona." I raised an eyebrow. That was quick. "They couldn't afford the house anymore," he added quietly. "Turns out those short-term loans never really fixed anything." I didn't feel happy about it. I didn't feel sad either. Mostly I felt. He stared into his cup for a moment. "She's furious. Keeps telling everyone you cut her off that you've been manipulated." "I've been paying attention," I said. He nodded. "That's what I tell people." We sat in silence for a bit. Then he pulled out his phone. "There's more," he said. "She called me last week, asked if I could talk to you, said she wanted to explain." And I said no. That made my throat tighten. "She also said you'd regret this," he continued. "That you'd come crawling back when you realized how alone you were." I smiled. Funny thing is, I've never felt less alone. He looked up at me then, really looked, and smiled back. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the porch and watched the sun drop behind the houses. The air was warm, quiet. I thought about all the years I'd bent myself into knots trying to keep the peace, all the excuses I'd made, all the times I'd told myself, "It's family, what choice do you have?" Turns out, you always have a choice. My phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "Mom, I'm sorry, we need to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned the phone face down. I thought ignoring her was enough, until a letter arrived that reopened everything. The letter showed up on a Thursday. No return address, Arizona postmark. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the kitchen counter and went about my day like it wasn't there. Made lunch, watered the plants, folded laundry. But it sat there, staring at me. By evening, I finally opened it. The handwriting was hers, careful, slanted slightly to the right, the kind she used when she wanted to seem sincere. She wrote about being alone, about the divorce, about how things got out of hand. She said she never meant for things to turn out this way, said she only wanted to help. She didn't apologize for the money. She didn't mention the tea. She didn't take responsibility. She just said she missed me. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the filing cabinet with the rest of the evidence. Not because I wanted to remember her words, but because I wanted to remember why I'd made my choices. That night, my grandson called like he always did. "She reach out to you?" he asked. "Yes." "You gonna answer?" I looked around my quiet kitchen, the clean counters, the soft hum of the house, the peace I'd fought for. "No," I said. "Some doors stay closed." He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "I'm proud of you." A few days later, spring showed up like it had someplace to be. The daffodils bloomed early, yellow against the gray. I stood on the porch one morning with my coffee and realized something. I felt light. Not angry, not bitter, just free. That afternoon, my lawyer called. "Everything is finalized," he said. "Your grandson's future is protected, so is yours." "Good," I said. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because my daughter wasn't finished trying to get back in, and this time, she used someone else. It happened on a quiet Monday morning. No warning, no call. Just another knock at the door. I already knew it wasn't friendly. When I opened it, I saw a man in a gray jacket holding a clipboard. Behind him stood a woman with a badge clipped to her belt. "Mrs. Patterson," the man asked, "we're here to follow up on a report regarding elder self-neglect." I didn't flinch. "Come in," I said calmly. They stepped inside and took seats in my living room. Same questions, same careful tone. This time, though, there was something else in the air, pressure. The woman glanced around. "Do you manage your medications yourself?" "Yes." "Do you handle your finances?" "Yes." "Do you feel isolated?" I smiled. "No." I stood up and walked to the hallway closet, pulling out the same folder I'd prepared before. Updated, organized, tabs and dates clearly marked. "This should answer most of your questions," I said, placing it on the table. They flipped through it in silence. Bank records, trust documents, lawyers' letters, the recording transcript, a log of every attempt my daughter had made to contact me. The man cleared his throat. "This is extensive." "I like to be prepared," I said. The woman closed the folder and looked at me differently now, not suspicious, but impressed. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, "I see no signs of neglect or incapacity here. In fact, you appear fully independent." "Thank you." Before they left, she paused. "For transparency, the report came from a family member." "I know," I said. After the door closed, I sat down slowly and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That was her last card. And it failed. That evening, my grandson came by. I told him what happened. "She really tried that?" he asked, shaking his head. "Yes," I said, "and now it's done." He looked at me and smiled. "You know she can't touch you anymore, right?" I nodded. "That's the point." Later that night, I stood in the living room, looking at the old photo of my husband and me above the fireplace. "I kept myself," I whispered. And what I did next made sure she could never rewrite my story again. Life got quiet after that. Not the lonely kind of quiet, the good kind. The kind where your shoulders finally drop because you're not bracing for the next hit. Spring rolled into summer without asking permission. I repainted the guest bedroom, took a watercolor class at the community center, started volunteering at the library on Thursdays, shelving books and helping kids with homework. Turns out, being needed for the right reasons feels pretty great. My grandson called every Sunday like clockwork. He was doing well, school, work, life. He brought his girlfriend over one evening, a sweet girl who looked at him like he mattered. That alone told me everything I needed to know about the man he was becoming. One warm summer night, after dinner on the back patio, I handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." His eyes widened as he read the papers. "Grandma, this is the house." "The trust covers maintenance and taxes," I said. "It's yours someday, when you're ready." He didn't say anything, just hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Take care of it," I whispered. "And remember, it was built on love, not control." After they left, I sat alone in the garden, listening to crickets and the soft hum of the world moving on. I thought about my daughter for a moment, wondered if she'd ever really understand what she'd thrown away. Then I let the thought go. On my 70th birthday, my grandson threw me a small party, just a few friends, cake, laughter. Someone popped a bottle of champagne. He gave me one last gift, a framed photo of my husband and me from our wedding day, restored and bright like it had just been taken. "I found it in the attic," he said. "Thought you'd want it somewhere you could see it." I hung it above the fireplace. That night, after everyone left, I stood in front of it and smiled. "I kept the house," I said softly. "I kept myself." Outside, the oak tree rustled in the warm breeze. The world kept turning like it always does. But inside my life, everything was finally still. Not empty. Peaceful. And that, after everything, was the only victory that mattered.